Hi and welcome. My name is Caroline Hollis and today I'm here with Gino Ciparroni, who is Digital Marketing Sales Manager of Dealer eProcess, and with Jesse Halter, who is Sales Enablement Manager for Google. So you guys asked and we're going to get answers today from Google. Today we're going to focus on the search network. So our first question is, for a dealer who has never run Google Ads before, what would Google recommend as the best way to start?
I would say that the best way to start is obviously go for that low-hanging fruit, right? So go for the people who have that immediate intent. That's the great thing about the search network is we understand their intent. So we understand what they're looking to do, what kind of product or service they're looking for. So always going for the really bottom of the buying funnels, that really direct response sort of stuff. So as an example, buy a 2016 Ford F-150 would be a great example. So start with your budget there toward those really specific keywords that we know are good converters, and then build up so that you're sort of building up your pipeline.
And for the dealers who are just starting out, a lot of times the biggest question is, I get it, I understand Google's important, but what do I need to spend? And that's a real important question to ask, and one that shouldn't be answered on the fly. You have to really take a deep dive into your market. I mean, are you a rural dealer? Are you a dealer in the city? Do you have a lot of competitors around? Things of that nature is going to impact what you need to spend at a minimum to be successful. So that's another important thing to look into as well.
So our second question is, what are the benefits of working with a Google Premier Partner?
Yeah, no, as a Premier Partner, I mean, we've seen our dealers really benefit from that relationship in terms of, I would say, number one, technology. I mean, getting us access to certain beta products that, other dealers wouldn't have access to without this relationship. That puts them kind of on the forefront of what, is going to be happening down the line, kind of gives them that edge. Insights from Google as far as strategy points and things of that nature that really just allow us to do a better job for our dealers. So that we can just obviously get more bang for your buck. And being a Premier Partner, working with Google, getting to ask Google questions like this is really a big part of that.
And the other thing I want to just kind of tack on to that is that we at Google, for Premier Partners, we have, we hold our Premier Partners to a very high level of transparency, to a very high level of service, making sure that the accounts are really top notch. So we have account managers that work with our Premier Partners teams to make sure that everything is running smoothly, make sure those efficiencies are there, and make sure that our partners are doing everything they can to have the result for the end advertiser, in this case the dealer. So the Premier Partners are held to, not only do they get those great betas and get those great resources and stats, but they're also held to a much higher standard.
So our next question is, what's the biggest mistake you see dealers making with their search marketing?
Ooh, that's a good one. I see a lot of mistakes, but I think that the biggest mistake that I see is not really tailoring the ad copy to the keywords. And this happens, if we look at different, I mentioned earlier, different keywords kind of sit in the buying funnel in different ways. So if something is really specific, then you're going to want to give them a really specific call to action. So if they're looking for that 2016 Ford F-150, you want to give them information about that Ford F-150. What's the lease deal? What are the specifics about that vehicle? Whereas if they're looking for, safest family car, you want to make sure that the ad copy is a little bit less aggressive in terms of the actual call to action, and you're kind of giving them, this is why, Nissans are incredible family cars. Here are their safety ratings. So really tailoring, making sure that you understand the intent and understanding where the searchers are in the buying process, I think is absolutely critical and something that is misstepped on.
I think a lot of times too, the biggest mistake I run into is dealers who are looking at their Google AdWords campaigns in an isolated way away from what their website's doing or what their organic traffic is doing. At Dealery, we have all of that synced up together so that these systems can talk to one another and really work well together. But it's important to know that if you have a mobile campaign running in AdWords, for example, that you're sending them to a good, engaging mobile page, not just it's going to my website. That should do the trick. So having these different systems that seem like they're individual, but they're really not, having them work together and talk together is critical.
All right, on to the next one. So what percentage of a dealer's budget should be spent on search versus display, and why?
48%. Just kidding. There's no steady, answer to this one. I can't give you a percentage, but what I will say is that when you do separate out the search budget from the display budget, what you're going to want to look at is you're going to want to see, how much of the market have you captured for search and really focus there first. So because, I'm going to talk about this again and again, the buying funnel, right? So making sure you're hitting those consumers who are at the closest, almost to purchase, and really focusing your budget there so that you can turn this into that ROI engine and support the advertising that's a little bit upper funnel so that you can feed that direct response mechanism. So if you look at search, you want to make sure you have as much budget there as you can, meaning impression shares. This is a really important term that we're going to want to look at, but meaning that you're actually getting in front of all of those people who you care about, who are looking for what you have to offer. So if I'm a Chicago-based dealer and there's a certain radius, my market where I want to hit, making sure that you actually are showing up for those people when they're actually searching for you. So make sure that's covered before you get into the display play, because that's only going to feed that search and make it that much more effective.
I would also say too, look at yourself as a dealership. What are your goals? I mean, are you a dealership that already drives tons of low funnel traffic? If so, maybe spending more on display is really a good play for you because you guys have that bottom of the funnel already covered. Or are you a dealership who say is fairly new to your market? Have your doors been only open for a year? You guys have to spend a lot more on display to get your name out there, especially in a market where there might be more well-established dealers. But Jesse, you brought up a good point, impression share. For the dealers out there who might not know what that is or why it's important, can you give us a little bit of info on that?
Oh, it's one of my favorite topics. Yeah. So impression share, what that is it's basically the percentage of time, it's like your market share. So if your impression share is 50%, that means that you're showing up to those relevant searchers in that geographical area 50% of the time. So if my impression share is 50%, it means that 50% of the time when someone in my geographical area who's searching for the car, the service, whatever it might be that I want to show up for them, then they're not seeing me. So it's like them coming and knocking on my dealership door and me putting up a close sign, which is obviously not a good thing. So where are they going to go? Probably, another ad that shows up, or, in this analogy, the dealer next door.
Right, which we don't want. So,
we don't want that.
Yeah, going back to display then too, if your impression shares is something you really need to focus on, I mean, customers, a lot of them do go to Google, but where else can you get in front of them that you're not currently getting in front of them? And that's almost any other website where you can show a display ad. So, something else to keep in mind.
Very good, guys. Thanks. So, one of the questions that we got from a lot of the people that we asked was, how do they go about pushing old aged inventory?
So this is an interesting question. It also goes back to kind of what we were talking about before, but when you have inventory, that's stubborn inventory, you want to make sure that you have really specialized ads that are for that inventory. So if you have a really stubborn, Mustang that's on the lot for a really long time, make sure you really have a great call to action. You show them exactly what it's going to take, and you make sure that you're showing up for really, really relevant searches. So it does take a lot more work to have that specific ad for if someone's searching for, that particular make and model, and going in there and making sure that you have the, whatever the lease deal is, or the sale price or the APR, but making sure that all of that stuff is really easy to understand. You have a clear call to action. That's going to help move that inventory a lot quicker.
I would say too, I mean, if you think of it this way, and the way I look at it is there's a buyer for every car, right? You just have to find that person. So if you have a system that can isolate your inventory and generate ads and keywords for each individual car, like we have at Dealer eProcess, one thing you can try to do there is let's take that vehicle or groupings of vehicles, individually give them their own little budget, and expand the area out further than everywhere else you're targeting to kind of increase your range and the people you're hitting to increase the odds of finding that person for that car. This could be another good way to go about it.
It's a fantastic point, because we were talking about this earlier, people are willing to travel a lot further for cars than dealers tend to think they are, especially if it's that, 1995 Ford Probe that I really need to have. That's, so, we need to, if we open up that kind of cast a broader net, then maybe we'll get that inventory moving. It's a great point.
Obviously, mobile plays a huge part in search today. So what's the most important mobile optimization that we can do?
Well, I'm going to say the most important is starting with the site. If your site is slow, if your site is not user-friendly, more and more people are getting comfortable actually browsing inventory on the website. More and more people are getting comfortable actually contacting a dealer through mobile websites. We see this in the analytics. Making sure that you have a mobile optimized site, and then that's not as much of an issue anymore. But it's this, the mobile speed we see is a really big issue, because for every second that you add, you are reducing your conversions by 10, 20%. So we want to make sure that we have a really, really great mobile website, because we can show up all day to these people and catch them when they have that immediate need. But if we're not giving them a way to actually engage or a way to look at that inventory, then we're completely missing out.
That's an awesome point, and I would say from the AdWords side of things too, let's consider the device itself. I mean, we're talking about a mobile screen that's maybe a couple inches wide and not very tall. So I'd say the number one metric, even more so on mobile than any other platform, is average position. And what are we doing to stay as close to the top of that tiny little screen as much as possible? Because if you're not in position 1 or 2, from an ad perspective, your chances of getting a click are very slim. So what kind of bidding strategies for mobile do you have that are different from desktop or tablet to make up for that is another really important part.
I think it's a fantastic point. So increasing your embeds to make sure that you're showing up really high on mobile, because if you're in the 3rd, maybe 4th position for the desktop, it's not as big of a deal. But if you're not that 1, 2 position in mobile, you could not even be seen at all, because there's a lot of scrolling that has to happen. Great point.
I think this is more for you.
Okay.
What are Google's top 3 recommendations for the auto industry when it comes to creating ad copy?
Ooh, okay, top 3. Let me see if I can find the top 3. The first thing that comes to mind is ad extensions. Ad extensions, because especially in the automotive space, there's lots of different details that you can have for a specific car, or maybe a dealership. So making sure that you're taking advantage of those location extensions, the phone call extensions, the structured snippets where you can actually, have the certain makes and models that you have. Call out extensions or site links. You guys can all look. I'm not going to go through what all of those are, but you can look them up. But just making sure you're increasing the real estate of the ad copy and providing that relevant information. So I'd say number 1 is definitely ad extensions. Number 2, I would say, is going back to my point before, making sure that your call to action, your message, is really closely tied to what that keyword is. So making sure that you have thoughtful ad groups, you have thoughtful groupings of keywords that group really nicely to the actual ad, and making sure that you are, reaching people with the message that they're actually looking for based on what their intent is. And I'd say 3rd is, this is an interesting one, but actually making sure you're opted into remarketing. So having that conversion tracking on your site, having that remarketing pixel, and then opting into things like RLSA, which is, that gets a little bit deeper, but RLSA is remarketing lists for search ads. So this is a great way to just show that, this person who's visited my site before is worth more to me if they search for my business again, because we know that 96% of the time people don't convert the first time they visit your website. So if we can re-engage with them in a more meaningful way, then this is absolutely crucial. So you can't do that unless you're opted into these, remarketing lists for search ads or these remarketing functions. And you don't have to spend any additional money to do that, but just having that set up initially is super important.
I would say a couple things too, just to add to what Jesse said, that we see is number 1, oftentimes putting price in an ad tends to generate a lot of clicks. However, you have to be careful with that because we have to consider what type of dealership you are. If you're a dealership that is high volume, low price, let's just get them out the door, then putting price in your ads would be a great idea, because you're going to be able to advertise a price that's lower than pretty much anybody else. But if you're a dealership that relies on markups and making more on the front end, you might want to keep that out. So talk to your vendor. Have that discussion from a standpoint of what type of dealership you are. The other thing that comes to mind too would be, let's look at what we're advertising. Just for a quick example, we know that the Ford F-150 is going to be coming out with the diesel engine soon, never been done before. That's going to get pushed a lot by Ford. That's going to get pushed a lot by Tier 1, Tier 2. So we want to piggyback on that. So let's make sure our ad text reflects those certain attributes of the cars that are being searched, rather than just sticking to the same old message that we have the new F-150, come check it out. Tell me as a customer a little bit more why I should check it out from you.
Yeah, I think that's piggybacking on the OEM message. I think that's huge, because let them do some of that branding for you, right? They're spending a lot of money on why Fords or Chevys make you really tough, and you're going to get a pretty girl, and you're going to have a nice dog, and you are really cool. And so let them do that for you, and then you can piggyback on that message, and you've already got that branding sort of started in the mix. So that's an awesome point.
What kind of marketing blogs or resources would you recommend to keep an eye on?
Handle this one?
Yeah, there's the Dealer eProcess blog that always has a lot of good stuff on there.
Is there here now.
Oh yeah, who'd have thought? No, I mean, we do like to keep up to date with a lot of trends outside of just what's happening within Google. So, I mean, that is a good resource. One other one that I really like is Search Engine Land. I think they always come up with a lot of really good insights, and it allows you to look outside of automotive, which we tend to put on blinders a lot of times when we're doing this, because there's a lot of advertising techniques and strategies that can easily be applied to our industry that we might not be aware of if we're not looking outside the industry. So Search Engine Land, like I said, is a good one. DEP blog is always good stuff on there.
You said non-Google, so I really can't answer this question. But making sure you think with Google.com and always the AdWords Help Center if you're actually getting into the nitty-gritty with the actual ads. So there are lots of good Google specific resources, but I agree looking kind of outside of that is really important too.
Thanks. All right, one more for you guys, and I think we can wrap it up then. So what's the next big thing when it comes to search marketing within the automotive industry?
Ooh, so I already teased it, and I really think RLSA is. I really do. I think there are a lot of really cool things happening, but remarketing lists for search ads work so well in the automotive industry if we're talking about search specifically. Don't get me started on YouTube or any of the other search stuff, but for search specifically, I think remarketing lists for search ads are they've been around, but they're something that dealers are now starting to take advantage of. And I talked about, all that is remarketing to people who've been to your site before through search. So I go to your site, Mr. Dealer, and I engage with your site somehow, and then I'm added to this list. And then when I go and search later for a term that this dealer is showing up for, I, as the dealership, can say, I'm willing to pay a little bit more for that person, or you could even have a special message for them. So you're way more likely to get that conversion the second time around if we're doing RLSA. And the great news is that you can do a zero risk RLSA strategy. And if you guys, you can Google this, so I know it's like kind of deep, but what you can do is you can essentially just turn on that data, start collecting that data, and then see how much better that group actually converts before you even spend any more money on that group. Just segment it out and see, does it actually convert better? Is it worth actually increasing the bids for? So I'm gonna have to go with RLSA.
Yeah, I mean, RLSA has shown a lot of promise. I think it kind of goes into the whole idea of ad personalization at the end of the day. Because if you land on a page for a new Civic, RLSA ads can be geared towards, hey, we know you're looking for a Civic. And same thing with banners too. I mean, if you land on a car, let's take the image of that car and use it to follow the customer to ESPN, CNN, wherever else, so that you're not showing them your generic overarching dealer message, which is fine, but let's get them the actual car that they were looking at so that they have more of a relevant ad experience. I think
it's scary with follow. That's good. Remarketing, we follow you to ESPN. So we just show.
We say stalk a lot of times too, which is a little creepier, anyways. But
it's us showing a relevant message to that person who has engaged with your brand before. So.
Well, Gino and Jesse, I just want to thank you guys so much for answering not only our questions, but those in the industry's questions on the Search Network. And thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Caroline.
Thanks.